I returned to the States after a few months of living abroad in a third world country where internet is not ubiquitous. And upon my return, I felt culture shock by my own culture. Now, when I was away, I connected maybe 2 or 3 times a week on average. You had to procure a prepaid card, and that was around $1 or $2 for an hour. You had to walk to a hotspot, and if there was electricity and a signal, then you were able to get on. And so it was such a big ordeal that most of the time I was like, I don't really need to connect. Without internet access, I started looking at my phone as more of a plastic carcass that holds games and photos. Also, mobiles were on a prepaid system, 50 cents a minute. So phone conversations were kept to a necessary exchange of information. We are trading physical experiences for a world that has neither sun nor ground. It is merely composed of 8-bit sequences of zeros and ones. Ay caca you not, that's exactly what it is. I am not trying to make the use of technology taboo, nor am I technophobic. I use technology every day, and I derive a lot of knowledge from it. Making it taboo would be the opposite extreme. What I'm asking is, before we unlock our phones, whether it be biometric fingerprint or a code, can we ask ourselves, am I opening my phone to use it as a tool or just feeding the addiction further? Even if it's the latter, that's okay. Own it and become aware of it. In our pursuit to distract ourselves from the silence, the very silence that allows us to hear our own inner wisdom, it's given rise to an explosion of social networks. Facebook came out in 2004, YouTube followed suit in 2005, Twitter 2006, Instagram 2010, then Snapchat 2011. Are we really going to let a handful of hipsters sitting in some garage office space, sipping on drip coffee, programming algorithms intended to suck the dopamine right out of your prefrontal cortex? Are we really going to let these guys dictate the way that we behave on a daily basis? These companies are dopamine vampires, and not cool ones like in The Lost Boys. There are foreseeable implications for children, and I would say they're paying even a higher price than we are as adults. Students are having to divide their attention between cell phone use and their studies on an almost daily basis. And for some of them, this is decreasing their academic performance, which in turn increases their anxiety. Any immature commentary that they've ever posted will be digitally timestamped and is fair play for future scrutiny. These posts never age out or expire in the eyes of society. And there is a tremendous unfairness in that. Would you want your child held accountable in 10, 15, 20 years from now for something that they posted in present day? I would say start looking at the cell phone in your kid's hand as though it was a bottle of grape-flavored Mad Dog 2020. Seriously, it's comparable to that. The same way that alcoholics dive into a bottle to cope with stress, kids are retreating into their cell phones for the same reason. The tragic irony of having all of these different virtual avenues through which to connect, the general consensus is a greater feeling of disconnect than ever before. We basically constructed this world. Children were just born into it. Thus, it is truly our responsibility to illustrate the pitfalls, mentor kids, but we must first master responsible use of it ourselves. Because do as I say and not as I do, that ain't gonna cut it. They are getting cues of what a tech life balance looks like from the adults around them. And generally speaking, to be frank, we have failed them. Studies are now showing delays in child development, brain tissue being morphed from radiation, burgeoning rates of depression, violent acts, social impediments, cyberbullying. I mean, the list goes on and on like Erykah Badu. Can we admit to each other and ourselves that we have been subtly and imperceptibly duped? And it happened right before our very eyes. Intended pun. Nostradamus didn't mention this in any of his quatrains, so he didn't even see this coming. As we registered for our free and always will be accounts, happy to have this medium to connect with friends without having a complete and fair understanding of how this personal data would be used and how it would affect our lives. Can we please, por favor, stop pretending that it is normal to see people walking around looking like a bipolar praying mantis with OCD and a cocaine problem? No es normal. It's not cute. It's not normal. People are using public toilets, getting dressed in locker rooms, doing cardio, ordering coffee, picking up prescription drugs, all while simultaneously talking on their cell phones. Basically saying F you to the person in their immediate environment who is actually trying to serve them. So here are some suggestions to create technology boundaries. Give it a crack, see how you feel. Spend time with your kids, your nieces, nephews, neighbors' kids, without the mobile on your person. They deserve your undivided attention, and you deserve to have your attention be undivided. Procure an MP3 player or an iPod for music, especially for my gym sharks, or even an old cell phone works, something that's not connected, right? It is beyond belief how many people I see very much distracted on their cell phones when they're at the gym trying to work out, because they use it for music. And when they go to change a song, they see that little icon, they check it, boom. Oh, well, now I have to check my email. Oh, boom, bam. Oh, look, a notification. And now you're in a rabbit hole. This one time, there's one guy who was just really immersed, and I tapped him on the shoulder. I gave him a moment to take out his earbud, and I'm like, hey, do you think society is distracted by cell phones? And he looked at me with his big blue eyes, and he's like, oh, totally, yeah. I live in California, so. By not having the cell phone actually on your body, you're also reducing electromagnetic radiation. And you know what? If you work out on a regular basis, it does add up. You can also simply put it in airplane mode for the duration of the workout. For my peeps who want to get real bougie, ha 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 ha, use a compact disc or a tape player and play your music. And please send me a photo of that. Go grocery shopping with a paper list. Leave your phone in the car, well hidden. I will forewarn you, this might cause some level of frustration, but take a deep breath and remind yourself that you have lived most of your life without a cell phone. The disquietude that you are experiencing and increasing cortisol levels are actually withdrawal symptoms. Instead of, oh, it's so bad, I don't have my phone, I feel anxious, I obviously need it, approach it with curiosity instead of attachment. Reframe that. Look how my mind is going berserk because I don't have it. Take a 30-minute walk without your cell phone. You can do it! No cell phone whilst sitting on the porcelain throne. And instead, contemplate how the tacos that you ate earlier were somehow converted into this steaming pile of feces that you see below you now. It is truly magical. Airplane mode for sleep, unless you have a child, spouse, or elderly person who is remote. Do not disturb while driving. Silent, not vibrate, especially on tasks that require your concentration. And allow yourself to get into flow. Use parental control apps as a tool to see your child's activity. This is especially true with single parent homes. You should both have an idea of how your child is spending their time online. Uninstall Facebook. Check social media from a computer instead, at a designated time and for a limited amount of time. This is something new that I started doing. Delay checking your phone after hearing a notification. We're talking 20, 30 seconds, right? But doing something different. Don't just react. Impromptu Shabbat. Take an evening at the house with your family or friends without electronic. Bananagram words, Rummy Cube, chess, Pictionary. Actually make people put all their cell phones in one centralized place to avoid temptation. Designate the dinner table as a cell phone free zone. Go and visit with the ocean, lake, or park without electronics. Bring a paperback book or journal instead. While you're standing in line waiting for something, or sitting in the doctor's office, or at a red light, maybe you're out to dinner with a friend and they leave the table to use the restroom. Resist with every cell, again, intended pun, in your body to check the phone. Cut the psychological umbilical cord and leave the phone in one spot in the house instead of carrying it from room to room like it's an infant. Unless, of course, you have a special circumstance like you're on call or whatever it is. Go zombie watching. See what other OCD praying mantises look like in wild environments like airports and malls, but without judgment. Having your addiction reflected back to you by another is a powerful perspective. Turn off all notifications except for when it's an actual Homo sapien trying to reach you, either through a text, call, or email. Now, in the spirit of Buddhist philosophy, you needn't take my word for it. Implement any combination of the above strategies for at least 2 or 3 weeks and feel the difference as you find freedom in the present moment and create a healthier relationship with technology. Now, to be forthright, I am by no stretch of the imagination technologically enlightened. I too am fighting this internal war right alongside with you. Most of us dramatically underestimate the amount of time that we use our phone because it's consistent throughout the day and evening. Our waking hours are punctuated by it. So the first step would be to create a baseline of your current usage. and then work towards reducing it. Whether it's 25%, 50%, it's at your discretion. There are apps, of course, to help you track this, but in this case, it is a tool to help establish a baseline from which to reduce screen time. That's the goal. The thing about us humans is that we don't really heed warnings, right? We have disease lung photos on cigarette packages, and yet that doesn't deter us from smoking. So I would say make it into a competition. It's been proven that we hold ourselves more accountable in the judgment of others. Do it as a family or with a friend, coworkers, or write a check to an organization that you despise. Give it to a trusted friend and instruct them. If you do not meet your goal, they have permission to mail it out. Now, it doesn't have to be an amount that's going to cause an overdraft, right? But definitely something that you're going to feel. Someone I knew did this with a sugar-free diet, and it worked quite well for her. This magnificent planet gives us a reason every day to be in awe of her. And yet, we're somehow more mesmerized by crushing imaginary candy. Historically, we have navigated to physical addresses before Google Maps, lifted the hood of the car to ask for roadside assistance, made babies without Bumble, kept in contact with the most valued people in life, educated ourselves through printed material, kept appointments without Outlook, all before the onset of the digital age. Again, please don't misconstrue what I'm saying. I am not implying that we should forsake technology altogether, shave our heads, and recite mantras all day. Hear me now, rude boy, booyakasha. Rather, the challenge that I'm posing is, now that we have this disclosure from these tech companies of how and why they're designing these apps, can we take that truth to reclaim some of our mental energy and invest it in more conscientious and productive ways?
I would totally work out if the day had 34 hours in it. I mean, I just don't have time.
Reclaiming the sanctity of our personal and family time by reducing the screen time would be a great start. However, we must first acknowledge the addiction, because we cannot address something unless we believe that it exists. Then we must actively go against the conditioning every day to be that individual who does not need to consistently fill the space in their heads. With the screen of the cell phone off, look at your reflection in that black mirror and ask, do I want to continue blindly succumbing to the social norm like a moth seduced by illuminated screens, making the groves of the addiction deeper? Or do I wish to return to the innate childlike awe of the physical world and engage in more experiences that indulge all my available senses instead of just two? Our individual composure in society does matter, and each of us has within us the power to influence the status quo.